What is going on, everybody? Been a diehard Pistons fan since '03 and eager to see this team getting back to playing winning basketball. In today's video, we are going to go through what I believe will be the rotation for opening night for the Detroit Pistons. As a disclaimer, this is all completely speculative based on what I've seen through the preseason, based on what I've heard from press conferences, and just kind of generally getting a feel for how I think Bickerstaff is going to manage the rotation throughout the very first part of the season. So we're going to get straight into it. The first obvious person who I think will be starting is going to be Cade Cunningham. I think it's pretty obvious he is going to be the starting point guard of this team. I don't really think that anybody, even people who maybe for whatever reason don't believe in him, think otherwise. It's very obvious that he is going to have a huge role in this team and will be our starting point guard on opening night. So we can move through that pretty quick. And now, starting at the 2, I've got Jaden Ivey. I've had Jaden Ivey kind of slotted in as my hypothetical starting shooting guard through all of the offseason, but I was very much open to the idea that that position might be Malik Beasley or Tim Hardaway Jr.'s. However, through what we've seen through the first 2 preseason games and in training camp, I think that not only Jaden has earned his spot as a starter on this team through his play, but I also think that JB Bickerstaff is going to be leaning in that direction based on his rotations in preseason and everything else in between. I think that JB's plan is going to be to start Ivy alongside Cade and stagger those two. So Ivy will probably sub out first, Cade will play, and then once Cade's ready for a rest, Ivy will come back in and kind of lead that bench unit as the main ball handler and initiator. That is what I believe will be happening from the get-go. So, moving on here to small forward, I think that starting at the 3 is going to be Simone Fontecchio. I think that Simone has done everything to prove to me that he is a starting caliber player in the NBA, whether that was through last season as the 16 games for the Pistons went about as well as they possibly could have. And everything we've seen in the preseason, to me, indicates that not only he is capable of being a starting caliber player in this NBA, but I do believe that he is a perfect fit for this lineup. And he did start the last preseason game, so I do think JB is open to the idea as well. All things considered, this could definitely have some movement on this position, but as of right now, I think Fontecchio will be our starting 3. So going on to the 4, I've got Tobias Harris. I know that we have yet to see him in a preseason game. From my understanding, I believe he is just out with illness. When I went to the open practice on Saturday, he was there. He went through warm-ups. However, he did not participate in the scrimmage. He just kind of hung out on the sideline in hoodie and sweats. But throughout the first 2 preseason games, we have not seen him take the floor. I haven't heard anything regarding an injury report. I just saw a random tweet mentioning that he was sick. So, assuming that's true, I think that there's no reason to believe that he won't be slotted into the starting lineup the day he is back. Obviously, one of the veteran leaders on this team, one of the highest paid players on this team, has started in the NBA for like a decade. So no reason to believe that JB will get fancy or think outside of the box on that one, assuming he comes back and slots into the starting lineup straight away. So at the 5, we've got Jalen Duren. This should be pretty clear. He has started at the 5 all of last year when he was available. He started at the 5 through all of the preseason. Another one, sort of like Cade, where I don't think that there's a whole lot of flexibility there. I know that throughout the offseason, some people thought maybe Paul Reed would take his spot, maybe Isaiah Stewart would take his spot, but there's no indication to believe that will be happening before the start of the season. As of right now, I think Duren is pretty much the clear-cut starting 5, and until something changes, I think that is pretty undeniable. So now moving on to the bench where things get interesting. This starting 5 that I just went through is the same starting 5 that I had thought was going to be the starting 5 during the offseason. I really haven't wavered too much on that, and throughout the preseason, I think that just kind of validated that. But the bench is where things get interesting for a couple different reasons. Number 1, throughout the first 2 preseason games, JB has used a pretty short bench until the second half. During the first half of the first preseason game, he only played 8 players. During the second preseason game in the first half, he used 9 players, one of which was Lamar Stevens, who maybe wasn't somebody anybody expected to see getting minutes that early in that game. So for the first guy off the bench, we have Ron Holland. I'm not entirely sure he'll actually be the first guy off the bench, but I do think that he will be playing minutes in the rotation, especially until Asar Thompson gets back, who isn't on this list, because I highly doubt that he will be available to play in the first regular season game. I know that there has been reports from the team saying that they hope to have him back by then, but all things considered, I don't think that's realistic right now because he's still not cleared for 5-on-5, and after not playing 5-on-5 since March, I don't see a situation where even if he got cleared, say Monday of next week, the Pistons would ramp him up from just getting back to 5-on-5 to playing an opening night, which is less than a couple weeks away at this point. I really don't think that's going to be a thing. I think that we're going to have to wait to see Asar Thompson. Of course, we're all hoping the best for him personally and for the team. But I think until Asar gets back, Ron Holland has a spot in the rotation because he fits that mold of being an electric defender, bringing energy, and just does a lot of things really well on the floor. And I think as the 5th overall pick in the draft, I think that the team will be more than happy to roll him out there and let him play that role, especially until Asar gets back. That's when things will get interesting just because some of their overlaps in struggles and overlaps in strength. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. As of right now, what I've seen through the preseason and training camp, I do think that until Asar gets back, Ron Holland will be a part of the bench rotation. So for the next guy coming off the bench, we've got Isaiah Stewart. Isaiah Stewart has plugged in as the backup 5 during the preseason for Jalen Duren. I think that's going to be how that works out. I know a lot of people thought that Paul Reed might have some competition for that spot, or Paul Reed might potentially play next to Isaiah Stewart, which he did a little bit in the second half of some of the preseason games. But as of right now, I think that the way that JB is indicating things through the preseason, he's looking at having just a simple rotation of Duren is the starting 5, Stu is the backup 5, and then Paul Reed spot minutes or taking in the backup for the backup minutes behind Stewart. I really don't think that that's going to be too set in stone, but going forward, that is how I see that playing out. So for another player off the bench, I've got Malik Beasley. Malik Beasley is definitely going to get minutes on this team just throughout the preseason. He's had some starts, but I don't think he'll be starting once Tobias gets back. Right now, it's pretty obvious that Malik Beasley is good enough to get minutes on this team and will help this team tremendously through his spacing, through his leadership, through not being a high usage player. He does so many things that really fit this team well, and I definitely think he's going to have a huge role on this team, just not as a starter, because I think Jaden Ivey has played himself into that starting shooting guard spot. Now, this is where the list ends, and that is kind of a point within itself. There's only 8 guys on this list. Of course, Asar Thompson is not included here because I don't think he's going to be ready to go for the opening night. I hope that I'm wrong. Again, this is all just me speculating and me predicting based off of what I've seen. But just going off of what JB has played during the first half of those preseason games, through what he said in press conferences, I think that he's going to go short rotation when games are still within striking distance to start off the year with just these 8 guys. Now, of course, Paul Reed is not on this list. Sasser is not on this list. Tim Hardaway Jr. is not on this list. I would not be shocked one bit whatsoever if opening night those guys do get minutes, but I'm not counting on it. And if they do get minutes, I think they're either going to be very, very spotty, very, very small, or coming when games are already out of striking distance. But again, can't make this any more clear. This is just what I'm predicting. Your guess is as good as mine. JB Bickerstaff has reiterated multiple times that he wants to test things throughout the preseason, different lineups, different units. So I don't even think he knows exactly who he's going to play on opening night at this point. So as I mentioned, all speculation. Your guess is just as good as mine. But I want to hear it. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you guys agree with this list in the comments below. Let me know if you think that there's somebody who you don't think is going to get minutes but should be getting minutes. Just kind of give me a pulse check on the rotation right now. Because me personally, not only do I think this is what Bickerstaff's going to go with, I think this is kind of what I agree with for the time being. Especially last year, seeing so many all-bench lineups, I do kind of want to see them lean a bit more into a shorter bench. But we'll catch up soon.